Don't say we can't, oh, just don't say another word. These thoughts you've imagined aren't real, aren't adding up. You fetched your ideas from nowhere.
Hi everyone, it's Matthew here and welcome to the 17th stadium of the SkyBET EFL Championship 2018-19 project. Hull City have called the MKM Stadium home since 2002, but can trace their history back to 1904. Hull City AFC were founded on the 28th of June 1904. However, like Wigan, Hull was largely dominated by rugby league, with the city also home to Hull FC and Hull Kingston Rovers, meaning any attempt to form a football club had proven difficult in previous years. Initially ground sharing with Hull FC at the Boulevard, Hull City's first match came on the 1st of September as they hosted Notts County in front of a 6,000 strong crowd, with the result being an impressive 2-2 draw. The club's first foray into competitive football occurred in that season's FA Cup. However, they would be eliminated in a preliminary round replay against Stockton by a score of 7-4 on aggregate. They would largely spend their first season as a club competing in friendlies before disputes with the landlords at the Boulevard led to the Tigers moving temporarily to the Circle, a cricket ground in West Park. The club would join the Football League in time for the 1905-06 season and would compete in the second division against the likes of Manchester United, Chelsea, Barnsley, Bradford City and Leeds City. During the maiden Football League season, the Tigers would beat Barnsley 4-1 in their opening fixture before going on to finish 5th. After spending the first half of the 1905-06 season at the Circle, Hull moved to a more permanent ground in the form of Anlaby Road, which would serve as the club's home until 1939. Under the management of Ambrose Langley, the Tigers were top-half regulars in the league. However, following Langley's departure in 1913 and the suspension of football owing to World War I, saw Hull lose their momentum once the league restarted in 1919. This would ultimately lead to the club falling into the 3rd Division North in 1930. Despite the relegation, the Tigers saw better success in the FA Cup, defeating the likes of Plymouth Argyle, Blackpool, Manchester City and Newcastle United, before losing to Arsenal in a semi-final replay. This stint would be Hull's greatest run in the FA Cup until 2014. Led by Hayden Green, the Tigers returned to the second division after they won their first ever league title at the end of the 1932-33 season, with Bill McNaughton finishing the season as top scorer with 39 goals. The outbreak of the Second World War in 1939 saw football once again suspended, and the club would swap Anlaby Road for Boothferry Park by the time it returned. The Tigers also had a new board in place following the war, led by chairman Harold Needler, and the club's first game at Boothferry Park was a 0-0 draw against Lincoln City on the 31st of October 1946, in front of a 20,000 strong crowd. Following the opening ceremony, performed by the Lord Mayor, the teams were led onto the pitch by a Sergeant Tommy Brooke riding a white horse. Former England international Rake Carter, I probably butchered that, took charge in a player-manager role in 1948, and in his first full season led the Tigers to the 3rd Division North title and an FA Cup quarter-final. The club's attendance record was also set in this run, as 55,019 attended the quarter-final defeat against Manchester United on the 26th of February 1949. Don Revie would sign for the club for £16,000 from Leicester City in November that same year. While the Carter-Revie double act looked to be taking the club to new heights, they were unable to deliver top-flight football, and subsequently both Carter and Revie left in 1951, with the latter joining Manchester City for £25,000 with defender Ernie Phillips heading the other way. Hull would yo-yo between the 2nd and 3rd divisions for much of the 1950s and 60s, but despite seeing the likes of Stan Mortensen, Ken Wagstaff, Chris Chilton, Ken Horton and Ian Butler turn out for the club during this time, the top flight would still remain out of reach. Following their record-breaking season in 1965-66, which saw the club win the 3rd division title under Cliff Britton, the Tigers stabilised themselves in the 2nd division and would make a renewed push for the top flight under the guidance of Terry Neal, but it would again elude them. Neal's departure for Tottenham in 1974 led to a decline that ultimately saw the club relegated back to the 3rd division in 1978, following a disastrous season that saw 4 managers take charge. Things would get worse, with the club eventually relegated to the 4th division in 1981 for the first time in their history. After 2 seasons away, Hull returned to the 3rd division in 1983 under the management of Colin Appleton, with a young side featuring the likes of Brian Marwood, Steve McLaren, Billy Whitehurst and Les Muttry. Brian Horton took over from Appleton the following year after the Tigers missed out on promotion to the 2nd division by a point, a promotion that would be secured in 1985. Years of inconsistency followed that, and despite a few false dawns, the club were back in the third division by 1991. Hull would continue to struggle throughout the 1990s and would even spend time in the rebranded Division 3, where in 1998 they would record their worst ever league position of 22nd in the 4th tier, with just 41 points, only being spared the humiliation of being demoted to the conference by Doncaster Rovers, who were relegated instead. By the time 2000 rolled around, Hull was struggling to survive, with the very real threat of liquidation looming, and at one stage being locked out of Boothferry Park, with fears only being eased following a takeover by former Leeds commercial director Adam Pearson. Having missed out on promotion through the Division 3 playoffs in the 2000-2001 campaign, manager Brian Little was able to rebuild the team following investment, but once more the Tigers were unable to escape the 4th tier. His successor Jan Mulby was no better, as Hull finished the 2002-03 campaign in 13th place. Talk of leaving Boothferry Park had been floating around for some time, and the ground was in a state of disrepair following the club's recent financial troubles. Arup Associates were engaged by the City Council to draw up concepts for what would become the MKM Stadium, with the designs being finalised by the Miller Partnership. After 14 months and on budget, the new stadium was constructed at a cost of £44 million, with the funds coming from government grants as well as cash stemming from the partial sale of council holdings in Kingston Communications, who would obtain the naming rights to the stadium. The stadium officially opened on the 18th of December 2002 as the KC Stadium, with Hull City beating Sunderland 1-0 in a friendly attended by a crowd of 22,467, with Steve Melton scoring the first goal at the ground. Rugby league side Hull FC also moved into the stadium, with both clubs ground sharing ever since. Following the move to the KC Stadium, the Tigers would secure back-to-back promotions as runners-up to take themselves from the rebranded League 2 and into the Championship. Once again, the club found themselves a step away from the top flight. A takeover in June 2007 saw Pearson sell the club to a consortium led by Paul Duffin, claiming he had taken the club as far as he could. Within a year of Duffin's takeover, manager Phil Brown led Hull into the Championship playoffs, where they would beat Watford 6-1 on aggregate to set up a meeting with Bristol City in the final, at Wembley on 28th of May 2008. On that day, the Tigers finally secured promotion to the top flight, after Hull-born Dean Windass scored the only goal. The club also became the third fastest to achieve promotion from the 4th tier to the top flight, having done so in just 5 seasons. After beating Fulham 2-1 in their opening match, with Giovanni scoring the club's first ever goal in the top flight, Hull would go on to finish 17th in their maiden season in the Premier League. They would, however, succumb to second season syndrome as they were relegated following the 2009-10 season. The club would be bought by Assam Alam in December 2010, and while they would reach the Premier League once more under Steve Bruce, as well as a first FA Cup final and subsequent European football in 2014, decline would set in and tensions between the ownership and fan base steadily grew, not helped when Alam proposed to change the name of the club to Hull Tigers, which was soundly rejected. The stadium would also see its name changed to the KCOM Stadium as part of a rebrand in 2016 by the stadium's sponsor, before eventually becoming the MKM Stadium in 2021 as part of a 5-year agreement with MKM Building Supplies. The 2019-20 seasons proved to sum up this decline, as despite finding themselves in 8th place after 26 games, they would only win 1 and lose 16 of their final 20 matches to finish 24th, and were relegated to the 3rd tier for the first time in 15 years. Grant McCann would lead the Tigers back into the Championship at the first attempt, claiming their first league title since 1966. In January 2022, Hull City was sold to Turkish media mogul Ayçun Ilıcalı, sorry for butchering that name, and under current manager Liam Rosenior, the Tigers now find themselves on their way back. The current capacity of the MKM Stadium is 25,586, which made it the 16th largest stadium for the 2018-19 season. The numbers regarding the individual stand capacities are vague, but average around 4,000 each for the North and South stands, 6,000 for the Chris Chilton stand, and then 11,000 for the West stand. Work on the MKM Stadium in Minecraft began alongside the Den and Portman Road on the 10th of August 2023, but was largely placed on the back burner, with much of the work taking place from March 2024 onwards. The lack of interiors meant the stadium was built rather quickly, with the stands being completed one after the other between March 24th and March 28th, with the stadium finally being completed on the morning of March 31st. And with that, I hope that you enjoyed the rest of the video and let me know in the comments what you think of it. As always, like, share and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.
The sun's gonna rise again, so don't bow or say